Good evening, Salem Tabernacle. Happy Wednesday to you. Thank everybody for joining me this morning for our communion and devotional thought. We had a really good time as always. You can see me again this Friday on Facebook and Instagram Live at 7 p.m. And we're just going to continue to be praying for racial healing, that God would calm the tensions, that people would be able to listen in a self-denying way. And as we've been saying, we want to be table setters, not gatekeepers. We want to invite people to a conversation, not keep them out. And this Sunday, I'm going to be slowly and calmly unpacking last week's message. So I know I gave you a suitcase full of stuff last week. We'll be unpacking it and coming to a deep understanding of what it means to listen in tongues, as we talked about last week on Pentecost Sunday. Tonight, we have a very, very special event. We're interviewing Jenn and Don Ulrich, who they are our youth directors here at Salem Tabernacle. Dan Underhill was the youth pastor many years ago, and there was about 180 kids. I took it over and dropped it all the way down to about 40. Anthony Fragomeni took over after me and did a good job, knocked it down to about 15 or 20. And then Jenn and Don took over, and they're doing a really good job. And we pray for them all the time. Hopefully they do better than Anthony and I did. But there's an amazing story. We'll probably get into it about how this even came to be. God was obviously at work in it. So without further ado, Jenn and Don, how are you doing this evening?
Hi.
Hello, doing good.
We're doing good. Beautiful day, beautiful weather. We're doing great.
How's the pandemic quarantine treating you guys? Are you stuck in the house? Are you able to go to work? What's your stories?
We're working.
Yeah, we're both working. Our jobs stayed open, so we're both out every day. Kids, on the other hand, they're all quarantined.
How are they doing?
They're doing really good.
They stopped listening completely.
They just stopped listening to you? That's pretty good though.
Yeah. We bought them a tent and they all moved out to the backyard.
Sophia's 3.5 and was packing her bags to move out already. So whatever you guys are doing, sounds like you're doing it right. Just for people who don't know you and for me who's terrible with names, can you say how many kids you have and what all their names are?
Do you want to say it or do you want me to say it?
I'll forget.
Okay. So we have half a dozen, and we have Truman, Olivia, Jaden, Mackenzie, Madeline, and Jacob.
Wow. So you guys are in the category of people, along with probably the Demetros family and the Mandias, where Name the Kids is an event we all get together and play at dinner sometimes when we hang out with each other. Can you name all the Ulrich kids?
Yes. Now, don't ask the middle names. I don't know them. I don't remember.
And there's been some pretty special testimonies regarding your children, right, and having kids. Do you want to give a brief summary of that to everybody? Because I think it's part of the beginnings of this DNA for youth ministry and just trusting God to do amazing things.
Yeah. Well, when we first got married, Don said to me about a month after we got married that he said, I believe God wants us to have kids early in our marriage. And so we got pregnant right away and we lost baby number 1 within weeks. And so baby number 2, same thing, we lost again in weeks, and baby number 3. And right around that time, after we lost the third one, there was a lot of prophecies going on in church, and the number 3 was going strong in our church in the meanings of 3 and Trinity. And so we got pregnant again with baby number 4, and I went to a conference in Ohio with the church, and our pastor at the time, Bishop, was prophesied over by the preacher. And he specifically said to Pastor, no more miscarriage in your church. And I had just gone through 3. And I took that literal for me at that time. And at that time, no one knew I was pregnant with baby number 4. And so that was the first pregnancy I carried full term. And we lost her at the very end of our pregnancy. One of our elders prophesied over me right after that and said that God is bringing subtraction to us, not for pain, but for he wants to multiply. So first he needed to subtract. And during those 4 losses, we learned a lot about ourselves and each other, and we grew together closer during a time where that would tear other people apart. And so while I was in the hospital with Avery, right after I had her, 2 people, you and one other person, the Bible verse about, which one was it? It was in 2 Kings. Mm-hmm. There was one verse that said, this year, next time you will have a son. And we took that to heart. And lo and behold, Truman came along 1 year later.
1 year and like in a few days.
Yeah, like literally 1 year later. So I thanked God, and I was like, I'm good. I do not need to ask for any more. I have that promise. And so, well, Truman turned 1, and Don said, I think let's try and have another one. And I was like, you know what? Let's wait. I'm in 4 weddings this year. And so let's just wait a year, and then Truman will be 2, and maybe, So a month after his first birthday, I find out I was pregnant again. And right away they saw we were having twins. So yeah, we found out we were having twins and was in shock. And then a month later, they found another one, and we were having triplets. So literally, we were multiplying.
Yes, quite literally.
I told them to stop looking for babies because they just kept finding them every time I was in the doctor's office. So yeah, we ended up having 4 kids under 2, and thought we were done. And we moved to North Carolina and for a little bit, and I always said that was our desert place. I've said that for years. And in our desert place, we found out we were having Madeline, and I said we were done. Then we were done. And Don was in church one day and said, God said to me, what makes you think you're finished? He said, you're going to have a son, and his name's going to be Israel. And I was like, okay. Now he's naming our kids. And I'm like, so you're telling me I'm getting pregnant, I'm having a boy? I laughed. I felt like Sarah. I laughed. And lo and behold, Jacob came along. And so we named him Jacob because,
Who wants to call their kids?
Yeah.
Come on, gal.
But yeah.
Wow.
And they have their own story. So it's amazing.
Wow. So I brought subtraction to the youth ministry. And so maybe you guys can bring some multiplication to it.
What?
Wow, what an amazing story. Absolutely amazing. And I'm sure you draw from that, from all the well of prophetic words and things you've probably written in journals, and it's probably come back in different seasons of your marriage and life since then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing. Amazing. And then when I took over the church, so everybody knows, I took over the youth ministry when I took over the church. And then probably November of 2017, I just felt like God said to let the whole thing go and wait for somebody to approach me to be a youth pastor. And that was that. We ended the youth ministry. And then maybe about 6 months later, one of our overseers, Dale Van Steenis, came and he met with the deacons, and he asked the deacons what their number one concern was for the church. And they said the youth ministry, because we didn't have one. And I was actually happy because I thought their number one concern was going to be me. So I was actually happy that it was the youth ministry. But then really fast, I was like, God, I'm sorry for being happy. Like, obviously it's terrible. We need to have a youth ministry. And I told everybody right there in front of Pastor Dale Van Steenis that I'm waiting. There's a whole lot of people at Salem who will say yes if they're asked to do something, which is a very precious and special trait for a church to have. And I felt like when I took over that I wanted to protect that yes. And youth ministry can be very daunting. It can fill your plate, and it really can play on your emotions. And so I wanted to make sure that whoever wanted to do it and wasn't just saying yes to fulfill a need. And I went away to Oklahoma to visit Pastor Mark. And the night I got back, I had an email from Don, who we used to chat like way back in the day, but we were never really like super close. Mm-hmm. And I think you took my job one time.
I did.
Yeah. You left, I got hired in your stead. And then when you decided to come back, they just kicked me to the curb.
Yes, that's true. That was, though, I came back because of the triplets. You just told that.
Like, that's a good reason for them to give you your job back.
We needed the insurance.
Yeah, I needed it bad.
Plus, they needed to get rid of me because of insurance, probably. I was breaking trucks, popping tires, getting the police called on houses because I was bumping into the alarms with all the wood paneling. I wasn't doing so good. It was good that you came back. So I get an email from Don, and I'm like, oh man, did I make them mad? Are they leaving? I was like, this is terrible. And I read it, and in the email, Don said that the Lord has been talking to them about possibly doing something with the youth. So like right then and there, I'm like, I called him, I was like, you're the new youth pastor of the church. Congratulations. But it was probably within 3 or 4 days of the conversations that we were all having. And so, you know, Jacqueline and I know that these two are here. And then just one more quick story before I ask them questions. At one point, there was just a lot going on. We were getting ready to ask them to be deacons. And I had a meeting with Jenn and Don to say, maybe we could just start having youth ministry 2 nights a month. And then, you know, they can focus on being deacons and things like that, you know, for the other time. And they both like actually got mad at me for even suggesting it. And we're like, no, like, we don't know why you would ask that. If we could do it more than once a week, we would. And I'm like, I'm so bad with youth ministry. Apparently I'm asking all the wrong questions. So Salem, these two are in, they're happy to be here. They love the kids. They have a testimony on every level. And so I thought it'd be exciting to interview them. So I guess the first question I have for both of you is, how have your personal experiences played a role in your passion for youth ministry? How have your personal experiences in life played a role in your passion for this?
For me, it was when I was probably 13, my father passed away, and I was, sorry, I'm shaking the table. And I was getting into a lot of trouble, and I stopped going to school. And my mother decided to look around at Christian schools for me to go to. And we were living at Poughkeepsie at the time, so we tried Faith Assembly first, but they wouldn't take me. And then we went to Beacon. And no offense, Faith, your loss. So anyhow, Bishop, you know, met with my mother, and he was like, I'll take them, but I want all your kids here. And so that's what we ended up doing. And I started going to school, which was very sporadic there too. Like I was showing up probably, 2 to 3 times a week, and, I'd skip gym day, and it shows. And eventually I started getting, more into school, but I wasn't really going to youth group or anything like that. I didn't want anything to do with that really. And Mrs. Arstead told me if I didn't go to youth group, she was going to make my life trouble at school. So, so I started going. And not advanced. It was just youth group back then. But it was what really changed my life. Like as far as, people who were like my youth leaders, like Stuart Walker was great. Chris Rebior, who doesn't, he moved away, but he was.
Stuart Walker was one of your youth leaders?
He was I was toward the end of it. Yeah, but Stuart Walker was our youth leader. Yeah.
You stayed?
I did. Barely.
No. He was the best.
He was great. He was really good.
He was the best.
Like I still talk about sermons that he's preached back then about 2 wild dogs, and one's your spiritual and one's your carnal, and whichever one you feed is which one's going to win out.
He can preach.
Stuart!
He can preach, yeah. And he led worship.
Yes, he did.
No. I don't know any of this. Stuart led worship?
For for youth.
Yeah.
Did he sing?
Yes.
There was a youth. Yeah, he did. What song was it? When the Spirit of the Lord dance.
No.
I will dance like
Upon my heart, I'll dance like David danced. Stuart Walker sang that song?
I remember that. But yeah, he was actually like him and Chris Rebior, I think, were the ones. Like Chris Rebior used to bring me over with my sisters, and we'd hang out at his house, and he was very interested in us. Like he took an extra interest in us. And Stuart, like, there was times where like I went to youth and there was nobody else showed up or something. We were going to do an hiking event. That's what it was. And I showed up and Stuart's like, yeah, we're still going. And that guy dragged me. I'm afraid of heights. He dragged me up some mountain, up a lemon squeeze, and out on this
Mohonk.
Yeah, Mohonk. Yeah, and out on some ledge, and I just lied on my stomach out there until he came and got me. But that was, but that and the people that I got to meet, like I started, find like friends, like friends, like Pastor Mark, was my, friend in youth group and school. And I started meeting more people that were, Christian. I feel like it's those relationships that, when I had issues where I was starting to doubt or things like that, like where those relationships now like would come back and, encourage me. Nobody was trying to talk me into doing drugs. They were trying to talk me into being a better Christian. So, that's what, for me, like looking back on my Christian walk, like that to me was so important. And it's still like the relationships I built back then, I still have, in some way or another, like they're all good relationships. So, that was what kind of drew me into it.
And so in some ways, do you feel like now, like you're facilitating those experiences for other kids that are in the church now that might be like right on the fence kind of thing?
Yeah, like I look at like the youth and I see like this generation, maybe the generation before, has so much stuff thrown at them. Like they have more access to any information, and there's so many things out there that will dispute what we believe, like our Christian beliefs. And like, I feel like without something like that, I'm not saying parents aren't doing their job. I'm not saying that. But without something like that type of get together, youth group, or where they can bond with other people, I think that, you can easily start to listen into those other things and it can sway you. Like, I know a lot of people that, you know, left the church young or stuff like that, and they don't even go to church any longer. They don't, it's not a priority to them any longer. So that's, to me, like when I see a bunch of youth that could happen to, it bothers me. So my relationship with Jesus has been the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I just want them to have the same.
So good. So good. Yeah, that's mic drop as far as I'm concerned. That's fantastic. What about you?
Well, my growing up was a lot different than Don's. I grew up in the church. So I was basically there every day from kindergarten up because I went to school there. We were in church 3 times a week. And so when I was finally old enough to be in youth group, I couldn't wait. I was so excited to finally get to join youth group.
Wait, so pause for a second. Were you here that whole time at Salem or BCA Oasis? I
was born here. Yes. My parents were baptized. My mother was baptized when she was pregnant with me at BCA. It was BCA back then.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you just said you were in our church every day, and when you got to youth group, you couldn't wait to go.
I couldn't. No, yeah. No, I was so excited.
Did somebody sprinkle like magic dust on the two of you or something? Like, this is incredible. Like, so after all of that, you wanted to keep going after being in church all the time. That's amazing.
I was the best social club of the times. It's awesome. It was awesome.
Oh, we gotta get that back.
There. Jesus was there.
Jesus was there.
No, yeah, I could not wait. And I think right when I was about to start youth group, they switched the dynamics of it. So I was the youngest one in my class. I started a year earlier than everyone else, just because of where my birthday fell in October. It's the best month of the year. But anyways, so they changed it from being a certain grade, I believe, to a certain age. So I had to wait a whole nother year where my friends were going, but I wasn't allowed in yet. So when I say I finally was able to go, I literally had to wait longer than everyone else in my class. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I couldn't wait.
You guys are made to. There's no one else. Like, those two testimonies are the opposite testimonies of where you guys are right now. You cover all the ground that like a kid could possibly be between the two of you. It's incredible. What would you say? I mean, Don, you brought up information access and things. I know you both pray. I know, like, even beyond interacting with the kids, you're praying for the church. You're praying for the kids. What do you feel like in your spirits is the number one attack on the life of a teenager right now? And that was dramatic. Not the number one. One significant. Tell me the number one. No. Like, what is something that you think is on their life that we need to be praying for?
I mean, me and Jen were talking about this the other day, and like, when Randall Worley talked about discernment, and we really feel like that is one place in particular, like the youth needs discernment, like to know what basically what he was saying, what you're listening to, what do we know it's true, I think with all the information they get, discernment's the most important thing they can have.
Yeah, I think that that's been something that's been on my mind for the last 2 or 3 months, especially with Advance, is we want to help them look through the lens of Christ, and instead of the lens, and especially with Randall Worley's message. I thought that was so timely on Sunday, because that's been something that's been going over and over and over in my heart, that I've been wanting to share for so long with them. So we just want to be able to help them use the lens of Christ to see through, instead of the lens that the world is pushing at them right now.
what would you say, what do you think one of the number one reasons why, like I sit there when we're having church and I watch who comes through to take communion, and I see a lot of kids in that middle school to high school range. So everybody knows advances grades 7 through 12. And it seems like there's more kids that walk by me than maybe at any one point are in the youth group on a Thursday night. What do you think the number one reason for them not going? Is it busyness? Is it disinterest? What do you think it is?
I think it might be a mixture of both. Like there's a lot of things now that like people in that, like kids in that age range, like, they'll be into sports. They'll do other activities, and some people might view advance as what was the word I used?
An
Extracurricular activity. Like, and to us, it's not the same. Like it's a spiritual, it's something for your spirit that's going to last forever. You might go out and play some basketball, and you're never going to be in the NBA, maybe, I don't know. But this is like what you're preparing for at advance is eternity. I'm not saying like, you're going to go to hell if you don't go to advance. I'm just implying it.
I'm saying it.
I know as far as like wanting to go, when our oldest was at the age to start going to advance, I literally had to drag him out of the car, physically had to, and I had so much mom guilt in making him go, but I was like, he needs to go. He needs to go, because I know what I experienced at youth group, and I know what you experienced at youth group, and he needed to experience the same. So the first couple weeks, I dragged him to youth group. He fought and fought, and now he is the first one who is, let's go. He's the one that's bringing kids outside of the church to youth group, and his whole focus is turned around. And so I feel like when we make it a priority to get them to, or make it not an option, eventually that resistance turns into something that is almost evangelical in a way. So just things that I see from the parent side.
Elder Paul Hansen said recently, when we were talking about the youth ministry, and he said there's obviously the story in the Bible where Jesus walks by the boat where James and John were in the boat with their father, and he calls them out, and they leave the boat and they follow Jesus. And Paul Hansen said that when he dropped his kids off at youth group and watched them leave his car and walk over to the church, God would speak to him about that verse. And it's like, this is what Zebedee must have felt like. They're leaving your car to go into the house. And he said it's one of the greatest gifts a parent can receive, is watching your kids leave your car to walk into the house of God.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you think you got to fight for it in the house, even from the parents' perspective?
Oh, we had to fight hard. We had to fight hard in the beginning. Yeah.
I mean, it's an important thing. We felt like back then, I think it was Anthony who was the youth leader.
Actually, so it was Pastor Bill to begin with. Yeah.
Oh, it was.
That's why that's why they didn't want to go. That's why they didn't want to go.
But when you left, he was so sad.
He was.
He was very upset.
He was very sad.
Well, I'm flattered, but like, all right, I'll take it. I have no self-esteem. I'll take it. That makes me feel good.
Yeah, I think there might be a disconnect. Like, people might think it's like just another extracurricular activity where you can go hang out with your friends for a while. And there is that. I mean, that happens there. But like, there's also like, you know, we'll do things where we will speak once in a while and talk to them, and we try to keep it as a conversation. You know, like there's not too many of us where we can all have a dialogue and talk, and so sometimes we'll just sit at the table and talk about stuff, and you know, but to like, you got to look at it as something that's important. Is all I'm saying. Like as a parent, like because of my personal experience with youth growing up, like I thought it was the most important thing for my kids to be in youth group.
What's your vision or goal for the kids entering and then exiting? Like it's pretty wide age group, so you have 7th to 12th grade. What do you want to see when a kid is coming to youth group for the first time, and then what do you want to see in them when they're leaving the youth ministry? And granted, they're going to be there for various amounts of time, but what would you like to see let's ask this. What would you like to see when a teenager is graduating high school and they're getting ready to leave the youth ministry? What would you like to see in their life happening?
I think we would like to see that they know how to evangelize through living. That when they leave, we always said, well, I like the verse 1 Peter 3:15, and it talks about being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you the reason for the hope that's in you. We want people to see Jesus when they see these kids, and that's what I meant by evangelism through living. They don't need to be out there handing out tracts and doing mimes on the streets like we did, but if they can be Jesus for others, that's what our goal is.
And you said that there are kids coming from outside our church family. Are they engaging in those good conversations that you're having and feeling?
Yeah. Yes, these kids are amazing. The things that we're finding out and the things that we're seeing. So if we have a night where we talk, we always have a discussion after, and those are the best meetings we've been having. And the residual that we've been seeing, as I found, somebody sent me a video, one of my kids, of one of these kids who do not go to our church with one of my kids at Bank Square Coffee House, and they were playing worship and singing at Bank Square. So these kids that are not even at Salem are spreading Jesus after coming.
I want you to say that one more time, just in case somebody was dozing off or losing attention. What were they doing at Bank Square?
They were having worship. They were worshiping, singing. They had the guitar out. We have video of them worshiping at Bank Square Coffee House in Beacon.
That's astounding.
Yeah.
That's astounding. Why wouldn't you want your kids to be involved in something that's turning into that?
Yeah. And that's them doing it on their own. It's not something where, it's just the residual, as I like to think of it.
That's really good. I want to say this. So like this has been happening in these interviews where there's something that just is speaking to me while you're talking. And I want to read this quick story. I think everybody knows it, but then there's something I actually want to say to Jenn and Don and to the church. When I took over the youth ministry, this is the story that I felt we should be using as a model for the youth, because it's the only story in the Bible where we see Jesus right around his teenage years, and then we don't hear about him again until like 30. And so Jesus is the perfect human life. And this is the only bit of information we have of him when he is young, when he's a teenager. And so, Ian, you could put these verses up. It's Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 41. It says, "Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of Passover, and when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it, because they were great parents. But supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey, and then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. After they lost their son for a whole day, then they start to look for him. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem searching for him. After 3 days, significant number, right, Jen? And after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers." Now listen to this. They found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers. He was listening and asking questions, and all who heard him were amazed at his answers and his understanding. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated me so?" Or "Why have you treated me like this?" I think Jesus could have said the same thing. "Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress." And Jesus said to them, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" And they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. And when he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to his parents, and his mother treasured up these things in her heart. And this is where we get the name Advanced. And Jesus increased or advanced in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. And so the three things that we get out of this story are: Jesus as a teenager was, 1, in the temple; 2, he was listening and asking questions; and 3, he was submissive to his parents. And those three things caused him to grow in favor and in stature with God and with man. And what I find interesting is you guys just said that some of the best moments happen when there's just conversation happening. And the first thing they find Jesus doing is listening, asking questions, and then it says they were amazed at his answers. I found recently, just before COVID-19 came, the last 2 Bible studies we had, I changed the model of the Bible study from me talking to having conversations. And both nights we did that, almost 100 people showed up, and we spoke downstairs for the full 2 hours, if not a little bit more. What do you think is happening in the church? Both of you, I want you to speak to this. Why is just talking becoming so powerful?
I mean, I think one, people like to be heard. I mean, listening, and getting out feelings in those conversations. Like, it's not like one person just standing there saying, "This is the way it's going to be," or "It has to be." And they're saying, "Well, what about this? Or what about that?" It builds a relationship right there when you're having that conversation.
I wrote down 3 things that I wanted for our youth. And it's funny that you bring all this up, because the 3 things was to be included, to be heard, and to have conversations. Those were the 3 things I wanted for our kids. And not just at Advance, but at home and in the church. These kids, they love to serve. And so that's where I was thinking of the inclusion part. But I have gotten so much out of having these conversations and listening to what they have to say after or during our discussions. And they need to be heard, not just with us, but with so many more ears than just ours.
This is so good. Can you say the 3 things one more time that you felt that you wanted to see happen in the youth ministry? You wanted the kids to...
I wanted there to be inclusion, conversation, and I wanted them to be heard.
Whew. That theme is just tearing through the church right now. This idea of being heard. How do you, like, I'm watching you, I'm listening to you, I get the sense that there's some emotion behind your desire for this? Just, and I know I'm putting you both on the spot, and take your time, but what, like, we use this phrase, people need to be heard. When you talk about a teenager's need to belong and be heard, and I know I'm putting you both on the spot, we didn't plan these questions, but what, if you can try to put into your words, Zero, I sense that there's great emotion attached to those desires for kids to be included and for kids to be heard. What does that mean to you? Like, I think we all know what those words mean, but like, what sense do you feel when you describe those things?
Well, I think so many times kids, starting when they're young, their voices get shut down, and they're spoken at and not spoken to or with. And so they grow up into teenagers and they don't want to talk because they don't feel that they will be heard. And so you get to a point where you feel like you are dragging information out of them when it should be something where they are willingly giving. And so if we take the time to just stop and listen to what they have to say, sometimes it puts a check in my spirit of where I've gone wrong. And so we need to be hearing what they're saying, because there is a lot of wisdom, and they're thinking, but they need to speak.
Don, thoughts, additions?
Yeah, I mean, like, I kind of agree with Jen in that, like, well, kids in general are usually shut down quick. Like, if they have, we do it all the time with our kids. Yeah, like, if like one of my kids are starting to whine about something, like, just shut up. No, it's joking. We don't.
Jacqueline and I do. Just so everybody, no, I'm kidding too. We don't, but we do probably. It's fine.
But like we shut them down quick, like a lot of times. Like, oh, will you just stop whining or something? But like, instead of stopping and saying, what do you want? Like, sometimes it's still stupid, but it's, but like, I should treat him like a human and hear what he has to say first, and it's the same thing with the youth. I always feel like, when I was a youth, like, it was a different time, and basically, we were we were told this is what you're going to do. When they did things at youth group, it's like, well, you're going to be in this play and you're going to like it and you're going to do it, and I think just listening to them and their feelings and what they think of God, like, that was some of the best conversations, like when they bring up God, or even sometimes their doubts, like like, how can you believe something like this when you can't see it? Or just when you sit there and listen, like, at first you're like, you don't want to shoot them down. You want to let them get it all out, even if it sounds ugly and disgusting. They need to open that up and have a conversation.
Now, this is it's absolutely mind-blowing what's happening here. And so everybody knows watching, this is entirely spontaneous, this part that we're on right now. Whether you believe it or not, it is. I joked around about Anthony before, but I'm gonna elevate him here, because when Anthony was the youth pastor, he had one specific story in the Bible that was kind of his mantra for being the youth pastor. And it was when Jesus said to the disciples, "Who do others say that I am?" And the disciples listed, some say you're Elijah, some say you're one of the prophets, some say John the Baptist has been raised from the dead. And then Jesus said, "But who do you say that I am?" And that's when Peter said, "You're the Messiah, the Son of God." And Anthony always said, Jesus wanted to know what they were perceiving in their own culture and what they were perceiving in their own heart. So he said, "Who do other people say that I am?" Because Jesus is willing to hear their view on culture. And then, "Who do you say that I am?" Because he's willing to hear their view on him as well. And so Jesus is always elevating the voice of his disciples. And it seems like it's right in line with what you guys are saying, and right in line with what we said on Pentecost Sunday, that we need to hear in tongues.
Yeah. Don actually spoke to them one night about proving Jesus what was it? Was it proving him? You had it.
I don't
He
know.
doesn't remember. It was really good.
Whenever I talk, I don't remember a
It
thing I
was
said
really good.
afterwards. I'm sick to my stomach through the whole thing. And,
No, it was basically what everyone is saying about Jesus around you. What are they saying? What kind of person is a Christian? What kind of person was Jesus? Because there's so many people saying he was a certain way, and really he was love. And so Don challenged the youth to prove Jesus.
the real Jesus. Yeah.
The real
I
Jesus,
remember, yeah.
not what culture or
Like
others are saying.
those right-wingers believe.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Or left wingers. Ah, no, what do we do? I'm stuck on it because it's this idea of just having open-ended dialogue seems to be I mean, I did not grow up in the strict church that you guys grew up in, but again, I grew up in the Assemblies of God, and I came here in 97, and then again in 2000, and again in 02. That's a whole different conversation. But it was like everything was just always like information getting downloaded into me. It was just teaching. But I think right now, conversating back and forth is one of the most holy, Eucharistic, Pentecostal things that can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. It works for us.
Would you say to parents who are having like their home, their kids don't want to be going, what kinds of dialogue do you think? So like there's the tendencies to just say either you don't have to go at all or you're going to go, otherwise there's going to be discipline. What kind of conversations could they be having? What kind of questions could parents be asking?
I mean, I would definitely find out why they don't want to go. If they, maybe they find it to be something boring, or, or maybe they're afraid of groups. That would be where I would have panicked if somebody told me you're going to go hang out with people you don't really know. And, I would have broke out in a sweat. But, yeah, I mean, that would be where I'd start, I guess, is ask the question why. But like at the same time, I would reinforce as a parent like how important it is to you that they go. If it is, if it is important. I mean, that's what I think the conversation should at least start like. I mean, maybe you get to the point where you're like, well, you're just going, but
Yeah, I mean, for us, that was what it was. This is what we do in our family. We go together on Sunday, and you guys go on Thursday night or Friday night or whatever night it was. That's just what we do. It wasn't really an option. But I mean, I know that might seem super strict on to some people, but that's just what it was. That was just what we did.
Yeah. It was funny when Mark and Danielle were in town one time. I think it was like, it might have been late 2017. Danielle came up, or maybe 2018, and I was still I think acting as the youth pastor, or maybe you guys had just started. Yeah, you guys had just started, and Bryn and Lena show up to youth group, and I'm like, why are you guys here? And they're like, well, my mom's making us go. They moved to Oklahoma. They happened to be around, and they made them go that one time. I thought that was just so cool, that like major consistency right there.
Yes.
I mean, I will say when they came back and visited while we were the youth directors, they wanted to go. They wanted to show up.
Because we're so cool.
That's what they said.
They did. They were so cool.
I'm not 100% sure where you guys are going with this. But I'm sure you're right. I mean, yeah, like I tried. You guys are better. I'm watching you both right now. You're hilarious. You can be serious, funny, back to serious in 2 seconds. I'm up there. I'm like, I felt like the white guy just like trying to do the robot. Like I didn't know what to do the entire time I was the youth pastor. I was just like, God, please. And then what really freaked me out is the group that was there after Anthony is an entirely different group than when I was originally the youth pastor, and just an era had changed. So my first time back, I'm the pastor of the church, and I'm like, excuse me, why is everybody on their phones? Like, no one had phones when I was the youth pastor before. Like, put their phones away. And they looked at me like, oh no, we'd rather die than give our phones away. And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to do this for too much longer. God, please send some servants for the youth ministry. And he definitely did with you guys.
So yeah, we incorporate the phones. Everybody take out your phones. This is what we're going to do.
So smart. So smart. I was out there like a bad comedy routine, just dying every single Thursday night. Like, and kids, they will tell you how they feel. They're like, yeah, Pastor Bill, that's cool. Your nose is too big for your face. And then you're just, oh my God, I can't not see that now. Like every time I look, I just can't not see that now. Like they're Who does most of the speaking between the two of you?
I do.
Yeah,
Me.
Don does most of the speaking, and then I do most of the activities and planning. So he will talk, and then we'll do like a game or some type of activity. That seems to be every once in a while I'll talk, but
our advanced group is turning into it's like one boy and like 12 girls. So it's like girls club.
So the boys, if you're listening, you should go.
Help that other guy out.
Listen, everybody, I met my wife at youth group.
I did.
He did too.
People don't see marriage the same way anymore. Like no one's going to go
they're
now.
like, yeah, I don't want to go there. It sounds like a disease.
I can't.
So I guess the final question is we have a young, strong group of kids in that like girls club, boys club age group. Third grade to sixth grade, or basically sixth grade and under. Like for the next, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, there's going to be kids pouring into the youth ministry that are younger now. And it's strong, and it's a great base of kids, and they're energetic, they're excited. There's already kids in that younger group talking about wanting to be pastors, talking about wanting to be musicians, talking about wanting to be on the worship team one day. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, as your pastor, I'm saying you guys better get ready, because these kids almost feel like that old school kind of mentality that they have. Like, they're ready for it. What could we all be doing as a church, not just as parents, but as a church, to get them ready to enter the youth ministry?
Well, one thing I can think of is if they're not involved in those other groups right now, get them in girls club. Get them happy to go now, because then when they transition to youth group,
so transition with their friends,
they'll have that group, that they will transition with the group. So definitely get them involved now. Even if it seems like a chore because you're tired and the kids are home from school and there's homework and dinner, and get them out and involved now.
And where are some volunteer needs that you guys have? When we're back up and functioning as normal, what are some volunteer needs that you guys have come across?
Having people volunteer with Advance.
Yeah, and I think Don, you and I have talked about this too, like praying about 1 or 2 people who maybe would even step up and say, I want to take over boys club for that 3rd to 6th grade range, and work with, I know the girls club and the hopefully one day boys club work with Jenn and Don, so that it's like one kind of ministry department and everybody's kind of on the same page. So it would be nice to have a couple of guys say, hey, we want to take over boys club again and play kickball and throw the football around and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, That, and I think that it's not so much volunteering, but if we can get Advance involved in other ministries a little bit more, we would love that. Like, they thrive on serving. And so like the Lift Galas, they live for that. Or if there is something with Salem Cares, they love to serve. So I almost feel like maybe just getting them integrated with other ministries as a group would be really beneficial.
Fantastic. I mean, I asked a few of them if they would start meeting with me in my office before church. And we were all of a sudden, after like maybe 4 weeks of that, just before I go out to preach on a Sunday, we're having like these deep political conversations and social conversations, and they're asking deep theological stuff. I mean, it was like just a great group of kids that we have. I mean, Salem, I want us every day in your prayer routine to be praying for the hearts and minds of our teenagers, of our younger people. Peter said, we talked about this last week, that your sons and your daughters will prophesy, your young men will dream dreams, that's women too, and your old men will see visions. And we really have to be a church that understands that there are powers and principalities wreaking havoc in our children's lives, and we need to pray the pollution clear. We need to pray the pollution clear for them. So dive into this prayer. Pray for Jenn and Don. I mean, they're our youth directors, they're deacons. Jenn is on the worship team. I don't know any more ministries that could be attacked than deaconing, worship team, and youth ministry. I mean, pray for these two people. They're dedicated, they care, they're doing it because they want to. There's no obligation in this at all. It's a very, very important thing to do. Any parting thoughts from you guys to the church, to parents? Did we say it all?
Just, we love the kids. We love your kids. They are some smart individuals, and we love them all.
Yeah, Jacqueline and I were just saying that we hope when Sophia gets there, you guys are still doing it, because we trust her with both of you. Or we can just drop her off at your house. And
what's one more?
Yeah, at this point. so we're actually going to actually stay up. Jacqueline's actually driving her right now as we Jenn and Don, we all love you. We're praying for you. Guys are absolutely the best. You're fun, you're energetic, you're entertaining, you're good at what you do. And Salem definitely supports both of you in prayer and any other way that we can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Salem, if we ever decide to do something creative with the youth ministry before we're able to come back as a church, we'll just send that information out to you. As soon as we can start coming back, obviously all the information you'll need to know about everything will be there. Salem, I love you. I'm so glad you join us on these Wednesday nights, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday evening at 7 p.m. for Facebook and Instagram Live. And then again on Sunday, I'll be gentle on Sunday, maybe I'm just luring you in. So who knows? But we love you so much. We'll see you on Friday. We'll see you on Sunday, Salem. Have a wonderful week. Grace and peace to you.